Hi everybody! Before I start with this video, it's crucial that you watch my previous video on international competitiveness to get the groundwork of the theory that I'm going to use in this video here. So this video is all about policies now to improve international competitiveness, but why? Why would a government maybe want to use certain policies to improve competitiveness? Well, there are two key reasons why. To rebalance an economy. If there is a nation that's very dependent on maybe consumption or government spending for growth, then if this government was to plough lots of money and energy into policies to improve competitiveness, then suddenly a new avenue of growth may open up. Export growth may open up as an avenue for future growth. So to rebalance an economy is key. At the same time, a lot of these policies will promote investment. So investment, exports, new avenues of growth open up, good for rebalancing. And also for the longevity and the long-term potential of an economy, for long-term sustained growth. Being competitive, is key. Right, so fundamental reasons why these policies are important, why competitiveness generally as a concept is important. I talked about the world being more globalized in my previous video. If that's the case, then competing with these nations is going to be fierce, is going to be really important. Hence, such policies are required. When we look at these policies to improve competitiveness, we go to supply-side policies. Right? These are fundamental. These are what tend to be used all the time to promote competitiveness. But remember, what do we mean by competitiveness? We looked at competitiveness in my last video in three key different ways. The price competitiveness of a nation's goods and services and the non-price competitiveness of them, but also the ability of a nation to attract FDI. So when we look at these given supply-side policies, we must, or you must be able to, in your essay, start with a policy and then develop the chain of analysis which will take you to one or more of these three things. If you finish there with an improvement in price competitiveness maybe, with an improvement in non-price competitiveness, with an increased ability of a nation to attract FDI, then by definition you have used this policy to in theory link to an increase or an improvement in international competitiveness. That's what you've got to make sure you can do, and I'm going to do that in this video here. When we talk about supply-side policies, remember the buzzwords that we use. Efficiency, productive efficiency being more specific. Productivity, we use a lot of the time. Incentives, these kind of key words. Remember, trying to make life epic? That makes no sense. Go and watch my previous video on supply-side policies. But these buzzwords are key, just to prove to the examiner that you know the ins and outs of how supply-side policies work. Right, let's go through these kind of big policies here. I've written four big ones down. Let's kind of fill that chain of analysis and make sure we get to this key endpoint here. So government spending on infrastructure. What kind of infrastructure? Well, transport infrastructure, like new roads, new bridges, new airports, new rail links, that kind of thing. If the government spends on infrastructure like that, then that should improve the efficiency of doing business. It makes moving goods and services around the country and internationally a lot easier, quicker, cheaper. That reduces costs for a business. That improves the productive efficiency of doing business. And that may translate into lower prices of goods and services, improving the price competitiveness of the nation's goods and services. At the same time, with strong infrastructure, it may become much easier to attract foreign direct investment, a sign again of increased international competitiveness. Okay, so that's the basic idea. You see how that works? Start with the policy, fill that chain out, get to the end goal. That's your job. Tax incentives. So we know that supply-side policies also include lower corporation taxes, lower income taxes, but also tax allowances on investment. So let's focus on lower corporation tax. Lower corporation tax increases the retained profits of businesses, which they may use to invest. What is investment? Well, spending on technology, spending on new software, spending on new capital, spending on innovation and research and development. By doing all of these kind of things, again, that should increase the efficiency for that business. It should lower their costs of production and therefore translate to lower prices. If they're spent on new technology and innovation, it may improve the non-price competitiveness too of their goods and services. And with lower corporation taxes, again, attracting FDI should be relatively more simple. Tax allowances on investment. What is a tax allowance? Well, it's the government saying up to a given threshold. So in the UK, the current tax allowance is £500,000. So up to £500,000. If a business was to ring fence its profits up to £500,000 purely for investment purposes, they will not be taxed on that profit at all. So increasing a tax allowance gives an incentive for businesses to put more money aside to use to invest. And again, the same chain of analysis as before, which will lead to gains in those three different areas. But also reducing income taxes. Reducing income taxes can increase the flexibility of the labour force, can increase the size of the labour force, can maybe improve productivity at the same time. Deregulation, we know regulation increases the cost of doing businesses. If you take unnecessary regulations away, like stringent hiring and firing laws, stringent environmental laws, health and safety standards, product safety standards, all these kind of laws that increase costs of businesses, take some of those away, again, you're reducing costs of production for businesses, you're improving the productive efficiency of doing business, that may translate into lower prices. If you have a very business-friendly environment, then again, attracting FDI might be more simple. And finally, government spending on education. So let's say it's productivity that's holding a country back. The government spending on education can maybe target productivity and therefore improve competitiveness. So don't just say education in an exam, give specific examples like curriculum reform, adult retraining in order to improve skills of the labour force. Talk about spending on apprenticeship schemes so that individuals can actually gain the skills that they want to kind of get into the jobs where they're going to be most productive. So we talk about improving skills, we talk about improving productivity, which will drive down unit labour costs. And when unit labour costs fall for businesses, that may again translate into lower prices. If individual workers are more productive and are producing products of high quality, that can improve non-price competitiveness too. So that's the theory. But in reality, some of the issues with supply-side policies are fundamental and how they may actually limit competitiveness actually occurring in the future. First of all, the cost. All these policies have a significant cost in them. And anytime we talk about cost, you can bring in the opportunity cost argument. What might these policies mean for the future in terms of how much they cost? Will they mean potentially that taxes may have to go up in the future? Well, if that's the case, then could those taxes going up may limit competitiveness? Maybe corporation tax will have to go up in the future. Maybe VAT will have to go up in the future. And suddenly we lose the price competitiveness that we just talked about previously. In the future, will there have to be cuts? Cuts on infrastructure, for example. Right? Cuts on spending on education, for example. Again, these are factors that will limit competitiveness in the future. So when you talk about opportunity cost, make it specific back to competitiveness. No guarantees such policies will work. Let's take an example like lower corporation tax. Just because the company's got more retained profits, there's no guarantee they're going to use those profits to invest. They may deleverage and pay back debts. They may put that money in the bank. They may use that money to increase salaries. That's not investment. Okay? So in theory, it's all well and good saying how a company may use more profits, but in reality, that might not actually happen, in which case there might not be the competitiveness gains we've talked about. A lot of these policies can take 5, 10, 15 years to work. Education reform is a classic. It takes up to 15 years to have an impact in the economy, an impact on skills, which means in the short term, if a country wasn't competitive, then that will be sustained. Are they targeted? The UK, for example, is very unproductive. Labour productivity is very low compared to other nations. Therefore, if the policies being used in the UK are very business related, are very investment targeted, then you might argue that the policies are being used to improve competitiveness in the wrong areas. What's more important is government spending on education. So you can always question whether the policies being used are targeted exactly where the lack of competitiveness is occurring in a nation. And remember, competitiveness is a relative concept. Okay? By definition, if you're competitive, you are more competitive relative to another country. So you might be using all these policies as a nation, but if another country is using the same policies more aggressively, maybe lowering corporation tax more than you are, spending more on infrastructure than you are, okay, then that, by definition, will mean that you're not going to gain in terms of competitiveness. So that's a nice little evaluation point to mention at the end too. So a really, really important video, this one. This could be a big essay in your exam. So learn this well, learn the chains of analysis, learn the evaluation points you've got at the end, and you will be smashing that exam when it comes. Thanks so much, guys. See you all next time.